My wife, Isabella, was gone. The Georgia oak tree where we'd laid her to rest still cast shadows over my thoughts, and the scent of magnolias clung stubbornly to my suit. But the real storm waited inside the cold, sterile boardroom of the company I built from nothing. There, my daughter-in-law, Cassandra, smiled with the kind of predatory satisfaction that made blood run cold. "Now that the old woman is gone," she said, her voice cracking like ice, "you'll hand the company over to my son and fend for yourself." I didn't flinch. I only smiled back, the corners of my mouth a thin line. They assumed grief had weakened me. They didn't know that Isabella had left one last weapon, hidden away, not in her will, but in a secret box. And the lawyer at the door wasn't just carrying documents. He carried a DNA test that would reduce their carefully built ambitions to ash. Before I dive deeper, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and hit like and subscribe if you believe a legacy is earned, not stolen. The air in the boardroom was thicker than the Atlanta August humidity. We'd come straight from the funeral, the cemetery's quiet replaced by a different, more suffocating tension. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table, hands pressed to the polished surface. Around me, framed photos of gleaming skyscrapers, sturdy bridges, and community centers filled with children chronicled my life's work, Vance and Sons construction. Today, the and Sons part felt like a cruel joke. My gaze kept returning to the empty leather chair to my right, Isabella's chair. 40 years she had sat there, guiding every decision without uttering a word. A narrowing of her eyes meant, "Be careful." A slight nod meant, "Trust your gut." Now, her absence pressed down on me like ice. I missed her more than breath itself. Across the table, Cassandra sat rigid, her blonde hair pulled into a painfully tight bun. Her black pantsuit screamed authority, her red lips cut sharp lines. The smile she offered was trained, fake, her cold blue eyes never softening. Beside her, Julian slumped, a 48-year-old man reduced to a boy under his wife's glare. He traced the grain of the table, avoiding my eyes, desperate for her approval. And then there was Liam, my 21-year-old grandson, glued to his phone under the table. Not a tear at his grandmother's funeral. Not a flicker of sympathy. Only irritation that his weekend had been interrupted. They weren't here to mourn. They were here to seize. I saw it in Cassandra's calculated scan of the room. I had expected this. In Isabella's final months, their visits had grown shorter, questions shifting from her well-being to company accounts and property deeds. They viewed her not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as an obstacle. And me, a gatekeeper standing between them and the inheritance they craved. They were waiting for me to crack. I let them wait. Finally, Cassandra cleared her throat, a tiny sound slicing the tension. "Alexand," she said, dripping with false sympathy, "we know how incredibly difficult this is. Isabella's passing is a tremendous loss." She paused, seeking assent from an audience that offered none. "But the company must move forward. The board is anxious. It's time for you to step aside." She slid a thick folder across the table. It hissed softly over the polished wood, stopping squarely in front of me. "These are the transfer documents," she continued. "You'll sign over controlling shares and the CEO position to Julian. Liam will get a board seat upon graduation. Everything is straightforward. It's the best way to ensure the family legacy is secure." Julian finally lifted his gaze, eyes wide, pleading. "Dad," he mumbled, trying to sound resolute, "it's the right thing." "It's what Mom would have wanted." I held his eyes for a heartbeat. I saw the boy who had trailed me on construction sites, helmet too big for his head, eager to help. That boy was gone. In his place sat a stranger. "Are you sure that's what your mother would have wanted, son?" I asked, voice quiet, but slicing through the tension like a blade. A smirk flickered across Cassandra's lips. She leaned forward, dropping all pretense of sympathy. Her tone sharpened, icy and precise. "Now that the old woman is gone, she said, each word a scalpel. "You will sign the papers, put the company in my son's name, and fend for yourself. You're old. Stop being a burden." The audacity was breathtaking. They weren't just claiming the company. They were trying to erase me, discard me like a worn-out tool. But a strange, cold calm settled over me. No anger, no shock, only a clarifying certainty. Isabella had seen this coming. She had prepared me. I scanned their expectant, greedy faces and smiled. A slight twitch of lips, but real, and it terrified them. Confidence faltered in Cassandra's eyes. Julian shifted, uneasy. "All right," I said smoothly. I reached for the folder, but paused. I didn't open it. "But before we proceed, I think it's time we hear from my attorney." Her face tightened, confusion flashing, then panic. "An attorney, Alexander," she hissed. "This is a private family matter." I glanced from her to my son, then to the empty chair beside me. Isabella's presence filled the room. "No," I said firmly, every word carrying across the boardroom. "It never was." My smile faded. The door clicked shut behind them, but Cassandra's venom lingered, a toxic residue in the air. My mind, however, drifted back 3 days, to the suffocating quiet of my home, after the funeral, after the last visitor left. I found myself in Isabella's study, the room I had avoided. It still smelled like her, a comforting, subtle mix of old books and lavender. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the dust motes like tiny, forgotten worlds. I wasn't cleaning. I was touching, tracing the worn leather of her favorite chair, fingers gliding over the spines of poetry books, trying to feel her presence in the objects she loved. Grief makes you clumsy. My knee knocked against her wooden desk, a book toppling to the floor with a thud. As I bent, my eyes caught something, an oddly misaligned floorboard beneath the desk. I'd crossed that spot countless times, never noticing it. Today, in the stillness, it screamed. Heart racing, I knelt, fingers pressing against the plank. It was loose. Slowly, carefully I lifted it. A soft groan of wood revealed a hidden cavity. Inside lay a small cedar box, unadorned but heavy with secrets. The lid lifted easily. The scent of cedar and thyme met me. Resting on faded velvet were 3 items. A single, perfect lock of dark baby hair, tied with a pale blue ribbon. A yellowed hospital birth certificate. Name typed neatly, Alexander Vance, Jr., and beneath them a thick, cream-colored envelope. My name, Alexander, written in Isabella's familiar, elegant hand. Hands trembling, I picked it up. This was no ordinary box. It was a place of ghosts. I broke the wax seal and unfolded the pages inside. The letter began with a weight that crushed the room around me. "My dearest Alexander, my love, my only love, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I have left you with one last terrible burden." My eyes raced across the page, tears blurring the words into streaks of grief. "I need to tell you a truth I was too cowardly to speak in life," she wrote. "A truth I carried alone for 48 years. Please, my love, forgive me. The boy we brought home from the hospital, the one we named Julian, the one we raised and adored, was not the son I gave birth to." I felt the room spin, my heart seized. "Our Alexander Jr., she continued, was born with weak lungs. He lived only 6 hours. The doctors told me while you were down the hall arranging calls to our unsuspecting family. The pain, Alexander. There are no words. I thought my world had ended." From the room next door came the cry of another baby. Strong, healthy. A nurse, Clara, approached, gentle and trembling. She offered a choice, a switch, a chance to take home a healthy child. In a moment of grief-stricken madness, I had chosen to save the boy I would raise as Julian. I couldn't bear to tell you the truth, Alexander. "I know it was wrong," her writing admitted, each word now urgent, sharper. But all I could think of was you. Every scraped knee, every sleepless night, every proud moment, I loved him as my own. I kept the secret for fear it would break you, break us. But now, the cracks show. The tone shifted, almost violently. I see the woman Julian married. Greed in her eyes, Alexander. She's a vulture, and she's trained him to be one too. They see you not as a father, but an obstacle. They will try to devour everything we built. I cannot protect you now from the outside, but this secret, it must be your shield. Forgive me, forgive my deception, but protect our legacy. The pages slipped from my hands. My world tilted. 48 years. I had raised a son who was not mine. Grief for Isabella collided with sorrow for the baby I never knew, and awe at the woman who had carried this secret alone. The cedar box was no longer just wood and velvet. It was a testament. Her love, her fear, her final plan. Beneath the pain, a cold, sharp resolve began to grow. She had entrusted me with instructions. She had demanded I protect our legacy, and I would not fail her. I sat on the study floor for what felt like eternity, letter in lap, the universe of my life rewritten in hundreds of words. Every memory of Julian shifted, every smile, every scolding, every proud glance, now tangled with the weight of betrayal and love. I could have given in. Signed Cassandra's papers. Let the company, our work, everything crumble. But then I saw her words one last time. Protect what is ours. A command from beyond the grave. I could not do this alone. There was only one person I could trust. My fingers shook as I found the name on my phone. David Chen. He answered on the second ring. Alexander, I was just about to call you. How are you holding up? A lawyer, yes, but first a friend. He had known Isabella for 30 years, had been part of our life, our dinners, our celebrations. And now, he would help me face the storm to come. David, I said, my own voice thin, cracked, almost alien to me. I need you. Can you talk? The warmth in his tone snapped into sharp focus. Of course. What is it? Julian and Cassandra. Are they pushing you already? He knew them too well. Worse, I whispered, taking a shuddering breath. David, I found something. A letter from Isabella. I heard him inhale sharply. I couldn't read him the whole thing. Not yet. I delivered the devastating heart of it. She wrote that our son, Alexander Jr., died at the hospital the day he was born. Silence. Absolute. I pictured him at his office, Atlanta skyline sprawling behind him, mind reeling. When he finally spoke, disbelief laced with sorrow. My God, Alexander. And Julian. He's not mine, David. He's not our son. Isabella. She made a choice. In the middle of unimaginable grief, she made a choice. I recounted the switch, each word tasting like ash. For a long, quiet moment, David was just my friend. He mourned with me. That incredible woman, he whispered, the burden she carried all these years, to protect you, to build a family. Alexander, I am so sorry. Then the gears shifted. The friend receded. The lawyer emerged. Steel edged his tone. Isabella was extraordinary, Alexander, he said, smarter than all of us. This letter isn't just a confession. She armed you. She gave you a way forward. Now we use it, hope, cold and sharp, cut through my grief. He was right. This was no ending. It was a plan. What do we do? I asked. Cassandra will fight, David said. She'll call it a sick woman's rambling, a forgery. She'll push back. I asked how to manage it quietly, without suspicion. Leave it to me, he replied. Hospital records are archived for decades. Julian had his tonsils out at 8. We can get tissue samples, compare them to your medical records. Clean, quiet, undeniable. The path forward was forming. And the other part, I whispered, her real son? "We'll hire a private investigator first thing," David said, unhesitating. "The best." Isabella left a date, a hospital, the circumstances. It's a needle in a haystack after 50 years, but the haystack isn't empty. We'll find him, Alexander. When I hung up, the world felt different. Grief remained, permanent, but the weight of helplessness had vanished. In its place, cold, hard purpose. Isabella had left me a shield, a sword, and a general I could trust. My next meeting with Cassandra and Julian would not be surrender. It would be an ambush. I just needed to lure them in. The next day, I returned to the heart of my world, our largest active construction site on the south side of Atlanta. I needed the ground to tremble beneath heavy machinery. I needed the sharp bite of cut lumber and wet concrete, the relentless rhythm of saws and hammers. This was my terrain. This was the legacy Isabella had tasked me to protect. I didn't enter the project manager's trailer. I walked the site, boots sinking into muddy, uneven ground. I needed to feel the skeleton of the building, to remember why it mattered. That's when I saw him, Nathaniel Hayes. He stood at the center of a heated confrontation with two contractors, each twice his age, 50 pounds heavier. A shipment of steel beams, wrong gauge, threatened to derail the schedule by a week. The tension crackled in the air, ripe for a shouting match for blame to be thrown like scrap metal. But Nathaniel wasn't shouting. He was listening. The blueprints were spread across the hood of a dusty pickup, his finger tracing specifications like a conductor leading an orchestra. Calm, measured, unwavering, he didn't blame the contractors. He guided them, pointing to the order form, then the steel beams on the flatbed. I watched, silently amazed, as he treated them not as adversaries, but as collaborators in solving a problem. He proposed a solution. Reroute a shipment from another site to cover the immediate need while the supplier corrected the error. Smart, precise, efficient. The contractors grumbled but nodded, saving face. Nathaniel turned to a nearby foreman, voice softening. "Hey, Mike, how did your daughter's recital go?" Mike's face brightened. "She nailed it, boss." "Thanks for asking." That was Nathaniel, seeing the work and the people behind it. A sharp pang hit me. The contrast with Julian was physical, almost painful. Julian would have delegated, or worse, threatened legal action, alienating everyone. I walked over as Nathaniel rolled up the blueprints. His respectful smile met mine. "Mr. Vance, I didn't know you were coming out today." "I needed to smell sawdust, son," I said, clapping his shoulder. "I saw how you handled that. That was good work." He nodded, modest. "They're good men. Just a supplier mistake. We'll make up the time." We talked timelines, budgets, and then I asked about the affordable housing wing, the part the board had tried to cut at Cassandra's urging. His eyes lit up, professional focus replaced by pure passion. "It's incredible, Mr. Vance," he said. "We're using the new composite framing you approved. Costs down 15% without compromising integrity. That 15% goes into better insulation, community green space. These families aren't just getting cheap apartments, they're getting homes, a place to build a life." I remembered the day I hired him, fresh from Georgia Tech, skinny in an oversized suit, portfolio brilliant, eyes burning with ambition. He wanted more than buildings. He wanted communities. The dream Julian never understood. I placed a hand on his shoulder, firm. His words stopped. A question in his eyes. "You've got a good heart, Nathaniel," I said, voice thick. "In this business, that's rarer than a perfect cost estimate. Don't ever lose it." Taken aback, moved, he whispered, "Thank you, sir." That means the world. I squeezed his shoulder one last time and walked away, boots sinking into red clay. I wasn't just fighting for a company, I was fighting for an ideal. I had looked its future in the eye. Back in the boardroom, my last words, "It never was," hung like a verdict. Cassandra's confident cruelty cracked, replaced by confusion and dawning fury. her lips, once a perfect mask, pressed into a thin, hard line. She saw me anew, not a feeble old man, but a foe she had underestimated fatally. Julian glanced from her face to mine, fear and disbelief etched across his features. Even Liam, my grandson, lifted his eyes from the phone, curiosity finally replacing boredom. He could feel it. The sudden shift in the room, the temperature dropping as every eye turned toward me, waiting, expecting some feeble gesture, some weak protest. But the next move wasn't mine. It belonged to Isabella. Right on cue, the heavy oak door swung open. No knock, just the quiet, deliberate turn of the knob. David Chen entered. Gray suit impeccable, silver-streaked hair perfectly combed. In his hand, a well-worn leather briefcase, the vault of my company's secrets for 30 years. The door clicked shut behind him with a sound that felt like a verdict. His eyes scanned the room, calm, precise, the practiced gaze of a man who'd walked into 100 battles. A subtle nod to me, silent, almost invisible, but the signal was clear. The plan was in motion. Cassandra snapped first, her voice a blade. "Mr. Chen," she said, sharp and dismissive. What an unexpected surprise. "As I was just explaining to Alexander, this is a private family matter. Your services are not required." She tried to frame him as an intruder, an outsider meddling in affairs above his station. But David didn't flinch. He walked slowly toward the table, gaze locked on Cassandra, voice unraised yet commanding the room. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Vance," he said, smooth and cold as river stones. He stopped beside the empty chair that had belonged to Isabella, resting a hand on its back in a small but powerful gesture. He aligned himself with her legacy. "I am here today," he continued, "not at the request of Mr. Alexander Vance, but in my official capacity as executor of the last will and testament of my late client, Mrs. Isabella Vance." The name hung in the air like a warning. Authority came from Isabella, not me. "So you see," he said, locking eyes with Cassandra, "while this may feel like a family matter to you, it is my legal and fiduciary duty, and my presence here is not just necessary, it is non-negotiable." He walked to the head of the table, placing the briefcase on the mahogany surface. The solid thud seemed to suck all air from the room. Polished leather, dark and ominous, holding the futures of everyone present. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The only sound, the faint hum of the AC. Then David rested his hands on the briefcase, fingers finding the brass latches. The metallic click-clack echoed like a judge's gavel, like a weapon being cocked. He lifted the lid, revealing neat stacks of documents inside. His calm, unreadable gaze swept Cassandra, Julian, then me. The ambush was set. The trial was about to begin. Ignoring Cassandra's outburst, David reached into the briefcase and retrieved a small portfolio, bound in a simple blue folder, Isabella's favorite color. He placed it gently in the center of the table. Sacred, powerful. It held more authority than any money or title Cassandra could ever dream of. "This," David said, voice cutting through the tension, "is the final and legally binding will and testament of Isabella Vance, drafted, signed, and witnessed 6 months ago, 6 months. Not a whim, not grief-fueled nonsense. This was Isabella's ultimate move, her voice from beyond the grave. This was no impulsive act. Every word, every clause, Isabella had crafted it with razor-sharp precision and absolute clarity." Cassandra let out a short, brittle laugh, harsh as shattered glass, meant to belittle, to reassert her imagined dominance. "Oh, please, David, don't be so dramatic," she sneered, waving a dismissive hand. "We all know what her will says. It's tied to the old family trust. Julian gets his controlling shares, my future is secure, and Alexander is provided for. It's all been arranged." This is just a sentimental formality, I watched her, feeling a mix of pity and cold resolve. She believed she was untouchable. She saw the document as nothing more than a speed bump on the highway to her empire. She didn't see the trapdoor Isabella had buried beneath her own overconfidence. She had underestimated my wife, and that was a fatal error. David's expression remained unreadable. "You are mistaken, Mrs. Vance," he said, his quiet voice landing with the weight of a judge's gavel. He reached into his jacket, producing a pair of slim, black-framed reading glasses, and placed them on with deliberate precision, a professor preparing to unmask a fool. The room fell into complete silence. He opened the blue folder and began to read. "I, Isabella Vance, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." His tone shifted as he continued, softening, bringing the first section alive. It was not about money. It was a letter to me. "To my beloved husband Alexander," David read, and the room seemed to breathe Isabella's presence. "You were the architect of my joy, the foundation of my life. With you I built a home, not of wood and steel, but of love, laughter, and unwavering partnership. For 49 years, you were my compass and my anchor. I leave you with my unending love, the only true asset that can never be appraised, divided, or diminished by time. Please know, whatever comes next, that every choice I ever made was to protect the beautiful world we built together." I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. Isabella's final gift, spoken aloud in front of those who had tried to tear us apart. Across the table, Cassandra fumed, impatient and dismissive. To her, this was mere sentiment, a delay in her conquest. David cleared his throat, tone sharpening to a precise, cutting edge. "Now," he said, eyes glinting over the rims of his glasses, "regarding the disposition of tangible and intangible assets." Cassandra leaned forward, her eyes glinting with expectation. This was her moment, or so she thought. David read deliberately, each word a scalpel. "All my personal assets, including but not limited to real estate, investment portfolios, and personal effects, along with all my shares in Vance & Sons Construction, and all associated voting rights, shall be transferred in their entirety to my beloved husband, Alexander Vance." A beat of silence. Cassandra's triumph flickered. She thought the will simply consolidated power with me, clearing her path to my empire. David continued, voice dropping slightly, "to my direct bloodline heir, should one be identified." The words landed like bombs. Silence thickened, suffocating. Julian's brow furrowed. Cassandra's smirk faltered, replaced by suspicion. "Direct bloodline heir?" she repeated, tasting the phrase. "That's archaic legal jargon. It obviously means Julian." She looked at her husband, who nodded weakly. "Right," he said, voice trembling. "That's me. I'm her direct bloodline." They didn't see it. Blinded by entitlement, drunk on certainty, they failed to notice Isabella's dagger, masquerading as a shield, aimed squarely at their hearts. David removed his glasses, folding them with calm precision, placing them on the table like a signal. The trap had been sprung. He fixed Cassandra with a gaze as cold and precise as a scalpel. "That," he said, voice low and dangerous, "is exactly the point that needs clarification." From his open briefcase, David Chen produced a single, sealed 9 by 12 envelope from a certified genetics lab. "At the written request of Mrs. Vance," he continued, "stipulated in a separate legal directive executed the same day as the will, and with full authorization of Mr. Alexander Vance, my firm engaged a third-party laboratory to perform a complete genealogical analysis. This was to legally and scientifically identify the beneficiary explicitly defined as the direct bloodline heir." He slid the envelope onto the table, a white rectangle of truth amid a sea of lies. It sat there like a dormant bomb, waiting for the fuse to ignite. David let her sneer hang in the air, untouched. Every movement he made was deliberate, ritualistic. From the briefcase, he retrieved a silver letter opener and slid it under the flap of the envelope. The sound of the paper tearing was a harsh, final snap, the only noise in a room gone suddenly silent. Every pair of eyes, even Liam's, was locked on that single envelope. David reached inside and withdrew a single sheet of paper, a standard lab report, clinical and impersonal, its numbers poised to annihilate a lifetime of delusion. He replaced his reading glasses with a deliberate flourish, scanning the sheet. Then he looked over the rims, first at Julian, then Cassandra. He allowed a single agonizing second of silence to stretch. Pursuant to the side-by-side analysis of genetic markers from Sample A, identified as Alexander Vance, and Sample B, identified as Julian Vance, he read. Calm, flat, merciless. The conclusion of the genealogical assessment is as follows. He paused. I felt my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. The probability of the subject, Julian Vance, being the biological son of the subject, Alexander Vance, is 0.0%. The words landed like boulders on still water. Silence swallowed the room. Just the ringing in my ears, the echo of a reality shattering in one sentence, 0.0%. Then the implosion began. Julian went first. Color drained from his face, leaving ashen gray. His jaw slackened. He shook his head slowly, disbelief transforming into frantic denial. "No," he whispered, strangled. "No, that's impossible. It's a lie." His eyes locked on me, pleading, desperate, childlike. Mom would never. Every memory, every birthday, every moment of his life fractured. The foundation of his identity crumbled beneath him. While Julian collapsed inward, Cassandra erupted. A guttural roar ripped from her throat as she lunged from her chair, scraping the floor. Her face, once smug and composed, twisted into pure, unbridled fury. Her manicured finger jabbed at me like a dagger. "You did this," she shrieked, voice jagged and vicious. "This is your sick trick. You forged this. You couldn't stand to see us take over, so you invent this disgusting lie. You cowardly, evil old bastard." The venom crashed over me like a wave and didn't touch me. I stood unmoved, a rock amidst the storm, silently observing the chaos unfold exactly as David and I had orchestrated. This was the tantrum of a cornered predator, the collapse of entitlement exposed. David, equally composed, let her fury roar, giving it space to burn out on its own before the final strike. With the precision of a seasoned surgeon, David Chen cut through the chaos. He ignored Cassandra entirely. His attention was on the one truly wounded soul in the room. Calmly, he reached for the simple blue folder still lying on the table, the folder containing Isabella's letter. With a smooth, fluid motion, he slid it across the polished surface. It came to rest directly in front of Julian's trembling hands. Then David looked at me, his voice carrying across the room with quiet authority, silencing even Cassandra's screams instantly. "Your son might want to read this," he said. "It's an explanation from his mother." Cassandra's fury sputtered into incoherent, venomous whispers. Her threats were hollow, her words powerless. All her energy now funneled toward Julian, urging him to deny, to resist, but he couldn't. He hunched over the blue folder, shoulders shaking with silent, racking sobs as he read his mother's final confession. He was no longer a co-conspirator, just a man, broken, mourning a life he never knew, and a mother he now realized he never truly knew either. David allowed the room to absorb the weight of Isabella's confession, the tension thick enough to choke. Then, straightening his tie with the calm finality of a man delivering his last argument, he spoke, his voice cutting through the sobbing like steel. "For the record," he began, clear and unyielding, "the will of Mrs. Isabella Vance is explicit. Her assets, her legacy, and controlling shares in this company are to pass to her direct bloodline heir." He cast a brief, professional glance at Julian. as DNA confirms that Julian Vance is not a biological relation. He is legally excluded from this specific and primary inheritance clause. A flicker of calculation passed through Cassandra's eyes. If Julian wasn't the heir, perhaps the inheritance would revert to the general family trust, a loophole she could still exploit, litigate for years. She was already plotting her next move. But she had not reckoned with the depth of Isabella's strategy. David anticipated her thoughts. "The will further stipulates," he said slowly, letting each word land, "that in such a case the entire inheritance passes to the biological heir, should one be identified." The conditional phrase hung like a knife in the air, sharp and merciless. The implication was crystal clear. The true heir existed, and the game had changed. Then, deliberately, David turned his gaze toward the boardroom door. "And we have identified him." As if drawn by some invisible command, the heavy oak door swung open. Standing there, utterly bewildered yet radiating quiet dignity, was Nathaniel Hayes. Still in his work clothes, a simple collared shirt with the Vance & Son logo embroidered over his heart, boots worn from the construction site, he had been pulled from the world of steel and concrete into this maelstrom of greed, lies, and broken hearts. His eyes swept the room, landing first on Cassandra, tear-streaked and furious, then Julian, collapsed and shell-shocked, and finally resting on me, a question mark written across his face. David's voice rang out, formal and resolute, leaving no room for doubt. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, each word a hammer blow, "allow me to introduce Nathaniel Hayes, the biological son of Alexander and Isabella Vance." A silence unlike any before fell across the room, deep, absolute, almost sacred. Cassandra and Julian stared at Nathaniel as if he were a specter, the living embodiment of everything they had just lost. He was not merely a man, he was proof, irrefutable, that their certainty had been a lie. David delivered the final, unassailable detail. "Our private investigation, following the precise leads left by Mrs. Vance, located Mr. Hayes last month." The room seemed to shrink around the revelation. Every plan, every scheme Cassandra had relied upon, every entitlement Julian had assumed, shattered. The war had a new front, and the true heir had just walked in to claim it. David Chen's final revelation landed like a sledgehammer. "We were also able to locate the personal diaries of his birth mother. In them, she detailed the circumstances of his birth and subsequent adoption, all cross-referenced and legally verified. That was it." The last lock clicked into place. The trap was sprung. I pushed my chair back, the scraping echoing like a gunshot in the dead silence. Rising, I felt a strength and clarity I hadn't known in decades. All eyes turned to me, including Nathaniel's, who now seemed smaller, uncertain, yet undeniably mine. I ignored Cassandra, ignored the broken man I had called son for 48 years. My gaze was fixed solely on Nathaniel. In the line of his jaw, the fire in his eyes, I saw Isabella. I saw the son I had never known. I walked around the long boardroom table, each step erasing 50 years of absence. I stopped before him, this young man of integrity and blood, this living testament to Isabella's secret. My hands rested on his shoulders. "Hello, son," I said, my voice thick with decades of loss and years of hope. "I've been waiting a very long time for you." The gesture ignited Cassandra's fury. Her icy composure shattered, exposing raw, primal greed for all to see. A scream, half shriek, half sob, tore from her throat. Her face, once pale with shock, now bloomed red with rage. "No," she shrieked. "You can't. You think you can just do this? Replace your son, your family with this nobody." She lunged, hands curled like claws toward Nathaniel, but David stepped smoothly between them. "He's a fraud. A con artist," she spat, eyes wild. "And you," she jabbed a finger at me, You're a pathetic old man, twisted by grief, burning your own family rather than admit defeat. I'll sue. I'll expose you to the world." Her words meant nothing. They were the desperate flails of a drowning predator. I watched as she failed to even glance at Julian, the man crumpled before her, whose entire life had just been revealed as a lie. Her only concern was power, wealth, her illusions collapsing in real time. Julian remained oblivious, trapped in his private hell. Face buried, shoulders shaking, clutching Isabella's letter. His sobs, the only genuine sounds from that side of the table, were a mournful symphony of loss. He was no villain, he was a casualty, a 48-year-old boy discovering he had lost everything twice over. Sensing the chaos beyond reason, David calmly retrieved his phone, pressing a single, prearranged button. Security was on the way. Then his voice cut cleanly through Cassandra's screams, aimed at Julian, though he barely heard it. "The will makes one final provision," he said, steady as a scalpel. Out of lingering maternal affection, Isabella stipulated a modest monthly stipend for Julian Vance from a private trust, enough to live, not to indulge, conditional upon enrollment in psychological counseling and a legally binding agreement to avoid contact with either Mr. Alexander Vance or Mr. Nathaniel Hayes. Then David's gaze froze on Cassandra, ice in his eyes. The will makes no provision for non-relations by marriage. In this event, Mrs. Vance, you are entitled to absolutely nothing. Moments later, 2 imposing security guards arrived, silent arbiters of finality. Their presence was a verdict in itself. Cassandra realized it. Her screams became a final wail of defeat as they escorted her from the room, threats and curses echoing futilely. Julian didn't look up. Hollow, shuffling, a man reduced to shadows of himself, he allowed himself to be guided out, leaving the boardroom and my life forever. In the sudden, ringing silence that followed their exit, I scanned the room. The table was a battlefield of scattered documents and toppled water glasses. And then I noticed it. Liam's chair was empty. He hadn't been escorted out. He had simply vanished. Like a ghost, slipping away the moment he realized the money was gone. No dramatic confrontation, no final showdown, just the quiet, cowardly retreat of a boy loyal only to his inheritance. It was sad, but painfully honest. The most honest act any of them had done all day. The door clicked shut, and the storm finally ended. The sound reverberated through the room like a verdict rendered. A war I hadn't even realized I was fighting had come to an end. The ghosts of greed and fury were exorcised, leaving a silence that wasn't empty but cleansing. A stillness, a space to begin anew. David Chen stepped forward, placing a firm, steady hand on my shoulder. "It's done, Alexander," he said quietly. "Isabella would be proud." I nodded, my throat tight with unspoken emotion. He gave my shoulder a final squeeze, then glanced between me and Nathaniel. With the tact of a true friend, he understood this was a moment for us alone. "I'll go file the preliminary paperwork," he said, offering a small, reassuring smile before gathering his things and leaving. And then there were 2, a father and a son, separated by 50 years of secrets, facing each other as strangers. The tension was tangible. Where do you even start? What do you say? It was Nathaniel who spoke first, his voice hesitant, laced with disbelief mirroring my own. "Mr. Vance, I don't know what to say." I turned fully to him, finally seeing him as he truly was. I saw the kindness in his eyes, the strength in his stance, and a faint echo of Isabella's smile that nearly brought me to my knees. "Neither do I, son," I said gently. "Why don't we start with our names?" "I'm Alexander." He shared his life with me. He spoke of his adoptive parents, a kind couple who had passed away years ago. He told me of growing up seeing the Vance & Son logo on construction sites across the city, a symbol of strength and permanence in his shifting world. He confessed he had always felt an inexplicable pull toward the company, a quiet admiration for the unseen man who built things that lasted. "When I applied for the job," he said, wonder in his eyes, "it felt different. Not just a job. It felt like coming home. I just didn't know why I listened, feeling the invisible threads of fate, of a mother's love, pulling this good young man toward me long before I even knew he existed. It was nothing short of a miracle. I knew then I couldn't burden him with the weight of instant family. I didn't need him to call me father. I needed him to understand what we were truly fighting for." "Nathaniel," I said, voice steady, "your mother's legacy and mine, it's not about money, titles, or buildings. It's about creating things that matter, things that last, a home where a family feels safe, a bridge that connects a community." I held his gaze. "I've seen that same builder's heart in you since the day you first walked into my office. Would you help me keep building?" A slow smile spread across his face, and in it, I saw all the hope for the future. "Yes, sir," he said, voice calm but resolute. "Yes, Alexander, I would be honored." I walked to the great window overlooking the city, a tapestry of buildings rising from dust under my watch. Nathaniel joined me. We looked out together. For a moment, I murmured more to myself than to him. I thought this was about justice. But it's not. It's about forgiveness. Forgiving Isabella for carrying such a heavy secret all these years to protect me, and forgiving myself for being too blind to see the real son standing right here all along. My legacy was safe, not because it passed to my bloodline, but because it passed to a man who shared my spirit. Isabella's will had been more than a document. It was a carefully plotted map, and it had led us to this very moment. It had never been about mere bloodlines. It had always been about the heart. In the reflection of the glass, I saw an old man and a young man standing side by side. Decades of hidden truths and unanswered questions had finally found their resolution, and a future I never imagined was beginning to take shape before us. This story reminds us that the most precious inheritance is not wealth, nor a company, but a legacy built on integrity, courage, and purpose. Greed and entitlement crumble in the face of truth, but the worth of a person is revealed through their deeds and the goodness that flows from their heart, a bond far stronger than blood alone. If you believe that true legacy is shaped by character, not just lineage, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. What does the word legacy truly mean to you?